So what makes somebody a human being? Is it fingers? Do we have a soul? Are we human because we say we're human? Are we human just because we're born from other humans? I don't know. Let's talk about that today. We're going to talk about The Island of Doctor Moreau. It's one of my favorite books ever. It's written by H.G. Wells, who is a very classic sci-fi author. You probably know who he is, or at least his work, from, well, have you seen any of the War of the Worlds movies? No? Have you seen The Time Machine? Yeah, but the book's pretty good. Have you seen The Invisible Man? Or read The Invisible Man? That's a good one to read too. There's a really old Invisible Man movie, pretty good. You should watch The Invisible Man. 1933, fantastic movie. When the Sleeper Awakes, actually had a couple of different names. There's two. There's When the Sleeper Awakes, or The Sleeper Wakes, I believe. The Days of the Comet, The First Man on the Moon, The War in the Air. Pretty good books. A lot of classic books. Honestly, just Google H.G. Wells, buy one of the books, and read it, or you're wrong. H.G. Wells, pretty good author, predicted a lot of stuff. We're gonna skim through them. He predicted that we would both build and use the atomic bomb. If I predicted that, I'd be pretty depressed. Another thing he talked about in a couple books, both The Time Machine and, in a way, When the Sleeper Wakes, is how classes, the upper class and lower class, middle class, all those classes were pretty much split into two very separate classes. So one very high important class, and then when everybody else would kind of slowly work their way to the bottom. In The Time Machine, we see this between the surface-dwelling upper class and the basically enslaved lower class, who evolved differently. And When the Sleeper Awakes, also in the future, two distinct classes. And H.G. Wells talks a lot about that, and I think that's come true because right now we're seeing a huge divide as the middle class shifts down and everybody else either moves up or continues going down. It's not, he's not far off from what happened. Island of Doctor Moreau is one of my favorite books ever. It may have changed my life, maybe it didn't, but it probably did. So to give you a brief summary of what happens in The Island of Doctor Moreau, a man named Prendrick, a protagonist in the series, surprisingly not Dr. Moreau himself. Prendrick is picked up after surviving in the ocean for a small amount of, well, long enough. You don't want to survive on the ocean very long without your rum ham. Prendrick is rescued by the captain of a boat and a man named Montgomery, who we find out is Dr. Moreau's assistant. And then he's brought to the Island of Dr. Moreau and kicked off the ship. So when he gets to the island, he's taken in because they're not just going to send him out on a boat and tell him to just wait there till he drowns and dies, because that's pretty sick. You know, Moreau does some pretty sick stuff. We essentially discover that Moreau has been trying to vivisect and just transform animals into humans. He wants any kind of animal to become a human. He wants to see if he can do it. And all the animals are given a law to live by as part of like a code. The laws are that they can't walk on all fours, because men walk on two legs. They can't eat flesh or fish, because Moreau thinks that'll cause them to revert to being their animal selves again, even though most humans eat meat. So it's a very confusing part of the law. The next part of the law is not to spill blood, which ties in with that. He doesn't want them to kill, because men shouldn't kill, nobody should kill. And it's kind of recited like a religion for them. Once night comes, because they're no longer seen, or at least it's harder to catch them, a lot of the beasts break the laws that they're given. We see that they kill animals, they eat flesh. Probably they also walk on all fours. Because they can't be caught, there's no punishment. And this code is recited by a beast. They're called beastmen, because are they men or are they beasts? We don't know. But this is how the law sounds. And this is, if you've seen any of the movies, specifically the 77 one, this is a very, very exciting. It stuck with me when I first saw it, because I saw this shortly after reading the book as a child. Is Dr. Moreau asks them about the law, and they say, "We will not eat flesh or fish, for that is the law, or be not men." All the other beasts recite, and they say, "Are we not men?" And they're like, that was just like, oh, I just watched that. And like, I read it in the book, and it was pretty cool, but like, watching it in the movie and just seeing all the beasts saying that was pretty cool. I kind of like, part that stuck with you if you've seen it. If they don't follow the law, they'll be taken back to the House of Pain, which is where Moreau experiments on them and chops them up and makes them into beastmen. It's implied that a lot of the beasts don't do something because they believe it to be right or wrong, but because they fear the consequences, which isn't truly following the law to be human. It's following the law to just not be punished, to not go back to the pain that created them because they don't want to do that. It was painful. You wouldn't do it either. And it's understandable. It seems to me that H.G. Wells is commenting on whether or not following something is the same as believing in something. So as the book progresses, we also begin to see more and more of the Beastmen. And a lot of the Beastmen, they'll argue, or they try to show why they're human. They even debate over whether Pendrick is human or a Beastman. One of the animals is, for example, a monkey who has been turned into a human. Or at least Moreau has attempted to turn to human. It's debatable. We can argue for days about whether or not the Beastmen are men. What makes them men? The monkey believes that he is a man because he has 5 fingers on each hand, and he makes a point to show Pendrick, look, we have the same fingers. My hands, your hands. The dog has been turned into a man, and he's very loyal to Pendrick, and we see him still show a lot of the traits of a dog, even though he's attempting to be human, or he's been turned into a man who is maybe a beast. Moreau himself believes that he hasn't made a perfect man yet. But does not being a perfect man make them a man? It's so in-depth, and there's so many parts of this book that just talk about whether or not they actually are what they want to be. But eventually, Dr. Moreau is no longer there to control the Beastmen. And the Beastmen all revert back to being what they were before they were forced to become men. So, for example, the dog, he still tries to be human, and he follows Pendrick around and accompanies him. He has a very strong bond with Pendrick, at least in my opinion. And he keeps being loyal, and he tries to be as human as he can. But he begins to walk on 4 legs again. And by the end of the novel where we're seeing him, he's very much a dog more than a human. We stop seeing him, he stops being portrayed as somebody who wants to be a man, and just a loyal companion who's more or less a dog. And I think H.G. Wells, it raises the point of, were they men? What were they that they reverted? Maybe they were men for a while and they stopped. Maybe they never were. Just as Moreau said, they weren't really perfect men. They were just kind of monsters. But all the animals believe themselves to be men. So are they men? Is that what makes them men? Is it 5 fingers? Is it believing that they're men? Is it their emotions and fear that maybe they didn't have before they were turned into men? Or maybe they did. It's hard to say what makes them them. What are they? That's a huge point of the book. Or we are who we choose to be, or we are what we are born as, or we are what we identify as. Is somebody that's made to be something that because they're made that, or are they what they started off as? The whole topic of who we are and what makes us who we are is one great big gray area. I think that's what H.G. Wells is trying to communicate when he does this. It's impossible to just nail and say, hey, this is this, you are this because of this. There's no way you can just pick that. That is too black and white to divide an identity of someone or something. One of the beautiful things about Wells' books and his writing, his whole style, is that it's not necessarily about the stories. Although the stories are great, but about the themes that he uses the stories to convey. This is a great book. I think that this is a must-read for anybody interested in classic sci-fi. There were no aliens, robots, distant planets, spaceships, interstellar light speed, bazookas, nothing like that. It was very simple, took place on Earth. But what it did do was that, in the way that all sci-fi should, it asked a very important question. Questions that hundreds of years later, we're no closer to being able to answer. They're still just as important and just as mind-blowing. I will spend the rest of my life thinking about this. And it's been asked so many times, but to me, nobody has asked the question in a way that hit home as closely as Wells did in this book. Just do yourself a favor and at least read the back of this book if this review didn't convince you. Try reading the book. I think you'll love it. Thanks for watching. This is my review of The Island of Doctor Moreau.